Hey, so how do I know when it's the right time to get into a business partnership? I get this question a lot. And in fact, I've started most of my businesses in business partnerships. And I want to share with you the lessons that I've learned to help you decide if a business partnership is the right thing to do. My name is Chaz Wilson, president and founder of Master Networks, Wilson Leadership, and Blue 42 Marketing. And this is something I wished I'd known when I started my business. Business partnerships are tough. They're tricky to navigate. And in fact, in most of my businesses, I have partners. There's pros and cons to both, of course. One of the reasons people would get into a business partnership is to help leverage something, whether that be startup funds, business growth, business experience, leverage customer bases. There's lots of reasons to partner in business. But let me share with you some of the foundational pieces that really need to be in place when you look at doing a business partnership. Number one, you need to operate off of an agreement, not just expectations. I think one of the mistakes I made early on in previous businesses was we sort of had these unwritten expectations of each other. And when you operate out of expectations, the expectation is what I'm putting on the other person. An agreement is then clearly defined and in writing. And that's how you want to create a business partnership, is do it from a defined or written perspective called an agreement. I think about in my own relationship with my spouse, right? That's a partnership. Those are challenging enough. And this is somebody that I care about and love. There can be challenges there. And you think that in a business, you're not going to have challenges? Of course you are. So those can be alleviated to the best as possible when you have a written agreement. You're not just working out of expectations. So I highly encourage you, first and foremost, to sit down with this prospective partner to the best that you can, write out who's doing what those roles are. How are you going to handle expenses? How are you going to handle money? How are you going to potentially get out of business? And one other one that I think most people do not think about when they enter into business is, what is a valuation model or method we could agree to upfront if one of us wanted to buy the other one out? Because often that can happen down the road. People's interests can change, their life can change, and maybe one isn't participating in the business the way they started to, etc. Lots of reasons can arise as to why you may want to get out of business. And wouldn't it be great if upfront you agreed to what that process looked like to get out of business and what that value method was? I think some of the hardest parts in business partnerships is when people want to get out of business and there's nothing clearly defined on how to do that. So that would be one of the key components to building a business partnership. Next, as you sit down and you walk through this agreement, I think it's clear to maybe have a runway or a path to ownership and partnership. Now, often I can get into partnership much quicker because I've had this experience. But even now, I've just purchased additional businesses. And in one case, I've known the person for a number of years. I've seen what they've done in their business. We were able to meet and define these things pretty quickly, create what that investment looks like, what does the exit look like, all of that stuff that I just described in basically a few hours, and could understand what it could look like to be a business. Now I've got another business that I'm going into partnership with somebody I don't know as well, and we haven't worked together as long. We see a lot of opportunity, but we've created a path and a runway to partnership so that we can, sort of play in the sandbox a little bit and understand what the rules are to decide if that's what we want to continue doing. And that's a wise thing. That's not a I don't trust you thing. That's a let's decide if this makes sense. It's sort of a dating phase before you get married. And so that's a wise thing to do in business. And trust me, I know if you're watching this, you could say all kinds of things like, well, this is my best friend. We've been best friends for 20 years, or this is a family member. Let me just tell you, if you're best friends or it's a family member or something like that, all the more reason to have written agreements, because I've seen time and time again where those don't end well because those agreements weren't in place. Okay, so have your agreements, have those clearly defined, have those exit strategies defined, and then have a path and a runway to partnership. One last thing I would say on this that's really important is don't just get into partnership to avoid something. And what do I mean by that? I can think of either times I've considered partnering or times that maybe in a previous business where I did, or others where I was maybe not confident in my own ability or not confident in the business's ability to succeed or achieve revenue or whatever it was. And I sort of partnered out of necessity and instead of partnering out of opportunity. And so keep that in mind as you're looking for a partner. This partner should clearly add value to your business, should be aligned with your core values. This partner should bring some level of value of either financial, and clearly define that. I have financial partners that are silent partners in my business. They were there in the beginning, they were financial, they invested, and that's clear. That was for the most part, the extent of their agreement and value to the business. And they were valued. They were valued then and they're still valued now, but have that clearly defined and understand that they have to bring a level of value. If you're partnering because it sounds fun and you want to split duties, I would say don't do it. I would say create a employee agreement or a 1099 agreement or a at-will agreement, something like that, and then decide if it makes sense to partner. Again, partnerships are tough. They take a lot of work. They take a lot of communication. But some of the things that I just shared with you may help you organize the best agreement for a partnership. But understand, in a partnership, if you're going to go into a partnership, make sure you clearly define it. Make sure you have a legal entity. Make sure you have a bank account and it's clearly defined how you cover expenses and how you distribute profit. In my experience, those are the things that clearly cause the most challenge when it comes to a partnership, is the disagreements on those things that aren't clearly defined up front. And so if you do that, you have the opportunity to create a successful partnership to build a successful and powerful business.